Hello everybody and welcome to the latest edition of my UX Facebook Live walkthrough audit thingies. And today we will start going through a couple of sort of related audits, specifically from members of the Denver Bloggers Club who I had approached with the opportunity to be audited in this way, and am now finally following through on that since I had a backlog of other people who wanted me to go through their websites first. So the next several of these audits are going to be different people's blogs. There's probably going to be some carryover in terms of some of the advice that I give to different people, but the idea is just that, you know, no matter how different or similar these different blogs are, there's a lot that we can learn by just looking through them objectively and finding room for improvement. So without further ado, let's just get down to it. And I'm going to switch my screen. So here we go. So this blog is Dougheyed, and Nicole Hampton is the proprietor behind it. She actually just launched a new high altitude cooking cookbook, which I need to pick up because I live in Denver now. So I need to think about these things. So that's super exciting for her. I'm always excited to see somebody turn their blog into a business, and it's obvious that Nicole takes her stuff seriously. And so here's the book. It's called Sugar High. Love the cover. But here's the blog that kind of inspired it all. It's called Dougheyed. I think I already said that, so sorry about that in advance. But all right, so here's her homepage. It's definitely like a simplistic layout, or minimalistic is what I mean to say, where the focus is all on the content. So I'm so here for that. I think that is exactly how it should be, really, regardless of whatever blog it is that you run. I feel like sometimes people get bogged down in design and layouts and creating things just for the sake of design, but not for the sake of the user experience. So already, we have a red stamp of approval on at least the basic layout of this website. One thing that I noticed right off the bat is also very minimalistic navigation. So one thing that I would like to see here is like an easier mechanism for sorting through recipes, and we'll look through the high altitude baking page and the recipe page because both of them go through and list out recipes, but I think there might be some ways to improve the navigation just to make it more user-friendly, and also, for Nicole to make her website more trafficked, having higher page views in general, because if it's easier to navigate, then it's going to be easier to keep people around, sticking around to read the rest of the great content that she's put together. So another thing that I want to point out just before we go any further on this website is the idea of consistency. So we have all of these top level menu items are in all caps, and that's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to follow that these sub menu items also have to be all caps. But you'll notice about me, the me is lowercase and then privacy policy, both are uppercase. So this is something that I feel like everybody does. I feel like I've definitely done this before. It's not just menu, it's consistency in your website in general. But make sure that once you have some sort of heuristic for naming things and, is it caps, is it lowercase, is it a mix, whatever, just make sure that you're being consistent. So especially between just these two menu items, either make the P lowercase or make the M lowercase. I know that seems like such a little thing, but consistency inspires trust. And people only buy from those that they know, like, and trust. Trust being one of the most important pieces of that puzzle, especially when it comes to selling things online, which Nicole, obviously wants to sell her book. I'm going to remove this chicken from my dog's clutches before she completely takes over our live stream here. So, gift from my cousins. She really likes it a lot. But anyway, Lola, you'll get that back shortly. So anyways, now she's coming over here to try to get it, so I gotta make sure it's absolutely out of her way. Sorry, baby. All right, so let's look at some of the structure of the homepage, because I feel like the homepage is one of the most important pages of the website just because that's where people kind of default. They might land on other pages especially on a food blog, you know, obviously there are recipes, and depending on where you're promoting them, you know, people might land on that recipe page before they ever get to your homepage. So obviously it's important to be thinking about how those things communicate the nature of your website as well. But we're on the homepage, so we might as well start with that. Oops. I think I just refreshed it. Now I just messed it up. So here we are back on the homepage. And I like that Nicole has, sometimes they say I don't like the sidebar on the homepage, but Nicole uses hers well to kind of communicate the nature of what she's doing with this blog so that people understand right away if this is something that's relevant to them. So she gives this nice intro, and she invites you to read more if you're curious, which her about page, and we'll look at it, includes a lot more information that you might want to know about her, you know, as you're reading her blog. I would say one thing that might be nice in advertising this new book that she's just launched is to give maybe a couple sentence description. You know, obviously you can see the picture and you can see that it's high altitude baking, but maybe a sneak peek at some of the recipes featured, maybe some testimonials from people who have bought it and who enjoyed it. I just think that right now, you know, if I'm landing on this website for the first time, that's not going to be enough for me to want to click through and buy it. Of course, that's just me. There are other people out there who behave differently, but adding some emphasis as well to like the heading of announcing it would also be useful in driving eyesight and attention towards that page element. One thing I noticed that I don't love is that there are a lot of ads both in the sidebar and on the rest of the website. This is the same thing I said when I went through Jenny Finke's website, and she has since gotten rid of a lot of the ads to improve the user experience. As a blogger, I understand that ads help to, you know, create money for all the hard work that you put into your blog, but I gotta say that, you know, when I see 3 almost in a row, here's another one, here's 4 just on the homepage, just on the sidebar, when you're still kind of working to win over people's attention and, you know, get them to like you, get them to trust you, that's probably not the best approach. So I said my piece on that. We also have this email subscribe. We also have a hello bar up here. So one thing I'd like to see, I think she does a good job of positioning her email list up here by saying never miss a recipe. But I think you could take that a step further and definitely repeat it in the sidebar as well by saying, you know, never miss a recipe, but also setting expectations. We send out, you know, new recipes once a week. You know, special promotions for the book. I don't know, but anything that you can do to convince that person to share their email. You know, it's hard to get people to sign up for emails, so you got to really make a case for it. And anywhere that you have that sign up form. So another nitpicky thing, you know, maybe add capitalization, maybe make this sentence case up here. You know, just make sure that it all just reads well and it doesn't seem like it was the second thought. So, all right, so we have recent posts. I would even maybe relabel that as like recent recipes, newest recipes, because that seems a little bit more relevant. And then we have a couple social, we have like Pinterest and we have Instagram, but we also have these social buttons. I feel like these should all be kind of packaged together in the same place. Because then people can decide for themselves, is Pinterest most relevant for me? Is Instagram most relevant for me? It's good that you show the feeds, but just kind of keep that thought process together in the same place. So, and I know I've said this before, but the idea of featuring your latest post or a feed of your latest post on the homepage of a blog website, while that puts the focus where it should be, which is on the content, again, you're at the mercy of what your latest posts are. So especially if you like, you know, like let's just say that this was a Christmas recipe and, you know, maybe let's say that Nicole like doesn't have a chance to update her blog until February or something, you know. That's not the best first impression. I'm not saying that's what's going on here, but just, you know, the doomsday scenario to consider. And, you know, the other thing, too, is I only see, okay, so here's another one. We have 2, I think, 3. Sorry, I'm going through so fast. I just want to count 4 or 5. I might have scrolling too fast. We have 4 or 5 recipes, but they're full recipes here. There's no real incentive to click through if these are what you're here for. So what might be a better way to, again, increase page views and, you know, get people interested in clicking through and checking out the rest of your website would be to feature these as like excerpts instead of having the full post. But again, I don't know that I love this style. What I would rather see, just based on my experience doing these audits and my experience prior to that in web design and so on, is what I'd rather see is like a feature image, and it could be your latest post, but then having like categories under that. You know, think of like the New Yorker or Chicago Tribune or whatever, like how those websites share a bunch of different news, but in a way that's easy to navigate and allows people to go kind of categorically. So speaking of categories, let's look at this high altitude baking category, the first of the recipe pages, at least in terms of the navigation. So, this seems like a missed opportunity to reposition that book, maybe at the very top of this page or maybe somewhere in the middle, and saying like, don't forget, you know, I've written a book about this stuff that you can order and have on hand, especially if you're someone who lives in a high altitude area, or, you know, if you're looking for gifts for somebody. But, you know, opportunity to sell right here, might as well take advantage, and then say, you know, not ready to buy or want to see all the different things that I've done so far. That was the oven for the Giordano's pizza I'm about to reheat, so I'm super stoked about that. Side note. But anyway, so consider adding that in, especially because this category is all about that. The other thing is, even though there aren't a ton of recipes here, I'm sure the idea is that this is going to be built out continuously as Nicole runs this blog. There needs to be some sort of sub-navigation here. So we have like cakes, scones, you know, most of these are baking related. Some of them are savory, some of them are sweet. You know, bread, cake, tips. I'm seeing a couple potential categories right off the bat, but having some easier way for somebody to pare down all this information, even if you had like a filter up here, kind of like an e-commerce website, that lets you to just narrow in on what you're most interested in, would be super useful. And so because we're on that same kick, let's look at the recipes page. So she does have tags here, at least that's what they appear to be. Or maybe they're just like page anchors. Okay, so what she's done is she's organized her page by these anchors, which are just like sub-navigational elements within the page. I went over this last week when I did Nico Presley's website, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time like re-going over it right now. But she has it organized in maybe a different way than I would suggest, because I would most rather these be categories, but if tags work for you, that might also alternatively be the way to do it. Again, so that we can expand this recipe's main menu item and have a drop down that then says, okay, here's savory, here's muffins, whatever. So, because, you know, she has this helpful way to get to different parts, but then here's the other thing. There's no like go back to the top navigation, which is something that's really easy to forget once you use page anchors, but it helps to improve the user experience, or even having like a function on the side that allows people to scroll back up to top no matter where they are. Otherwise, they're probably just going to end wherever it is that they end by naturally scrolling. And, you know, they might be discouraged from going to check out the other stuff that you have. But this is really overwhelming to look at, just as it is. Okay, so here's another thing that I want to call attention to, and that's the idea of having comments on pages that aren't posts on a blog. You know, obviously people are interacting here, so it might not be a good idea to take away the comments, but at the same time, I wonder if turning off the comments on these pages would focus them more on the posts, which is where like brands would go to see like if you have engagement, and you know, other people go to see you know, if this is a popular site and if people are interacting on it. So there are a couple pages on her site where the comments are on the pages where I'd suggest maybe taking them off, just because it's not a place where people expect to interact. Some people obviously did it, but I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. And then we did talk about this last week too. Copyright footer dates, man, check them, make sure that they're up to par, up to, you know, the current year. This one says copyright 2015, so get on that. I shared in my last newsletter, which I linked to in the YouTube version of this video. Last week I shared how to change that in WordPress, so you can look in my archives if you're following me on YouTube to get that. All right, so let's look at one or two more pages. Let's look at About Me. And okay, so here's another thing. Is privacy policy rightly placed under About Me? I don't think so. I think this is totally a use case for building out the footer and just adding it in there because that's where people expect to see privacy policies. Privacy policies shouldn't really be a top-level navigational element. Just because it's something that might be a requirement, especially in the time of GDPR, or it will become a requirement if it isn't already in the country of your residence. But it's not something that people like need help navigating to. Just put it in the footer. All right. So again, like, okay, so look now, here's an extra ad. Here's an ad before I even get to read About Me. And then there's probably one at the bottom of here too, or maybe it's not, but usually there's one like right before the comments as well. Ad overload, don't do it, cut them down, do some tests to figure out which ones are converting the best and keep those, but get rid of the rest of them because it's hurting the reading experience having these two, and it just looks commercial, you know, it doesn't look like this is a personal blog now, it looks like, you know, this is a little bit spammy. So besides that, I really like this About page. I would highly encourage you to go and read it yourself because it's got a lot of fun elements, talks a lot about what Nicole's up to, what she likes to do, and how that's relevant, even shares some of her favorite recipes. One thing, she talks about working with brands and she includes their email, but what would be a lot more useful is if there was a contact form where people can get in touch directly from here in the place where they're making the decision to get in touch. It would also help if there was a contact me menu item because that's where people would normally look to make a brand partnership or to get in touch about something else. So, you know, you have to make it obvious, otherwise people are going to probably assume that that's not something that you want. So, I think we've gone over all the main pages here. You know, overall, it's a great blog. There's not a whole lot I would change. There are just things that I would optimize to make it better and to make it a better reading experience for the people that Nicole is trying to serve here. And in turn, I think they will reward her with more page views and, you know, sending more friends her way and all the good stuff like that. So without further ado, I have some Giordano's to heat up, and we'll be back next week probably with another blog or website.